Nigerian authorities have been asked to focus on a two-pronged economic approach to infrastructure, policies and energy provision, as well as better public service in order to achieve higher economic inclusion. The advice is part of a one-on-one interview about the state of Africa's regional economic outlook held by Channels Television with the Africa Director of the International Monetary Fund, Mr. Abebe Selassie, in Abuja.
This report, and taking the cue from the just concluded World Bank IMF spring meetings, that about three African countries or economies are Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola, three resource economies that dragging the rest of the SSA. How long do you think this drag on the rest of the continent will continue?
That's a good question. So, what you're drawing on is that Sub-Saharan Africa's growth this year is estimated to be around 3.5% compared to 3% last year. So for the region as a whole, when you look at the regional aggregate, we're seeing some growth in, some acceleration in economic growth, but not quite to the healthy levels that we used to have before 2014. One reason why the average growth number continues to be lower than in the past is because, as you noted, growth in Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola remains very modest. How long this will continue, on current policies, we see basically growth in these three large economies, particularly in Angola and South Africa, remaining at around the 3% mark over the medium term. But with policy reforms, we do think that they will be able to accelerate a bit more and enjoy higher growth. So it all depends on the policy reforms we're going to be seeing.
Do you think if this growth lag in these three countries remain over a midterm, do you think is there a fear of contagion?
I think first and foremost, the bigger impact will be on those countries themselves. Okay, so the higher growth that the populations need in those countries will not be forthcoming. Now, Angola has confronted its policy challenges head-on, and we are seeing a lot of the macroeconomic reforms that the country needs being put in place. So we do think growth will recover over the medium term. And in Nigeria and South Africa also, we're quite hopeful that we'll let with Nigeria elections out of the way, and South Africa elections coming soon. Some of the more difficult reforms that are needed to engender higher private investment can be put in place so the countries can enjoy higher growth.
For South Africa specifically, what are your concerns at the IMF?
What we've seen in South Africa basically is that, the calibration of macroeconomic policies, the setting of monetary fiscal policy has generally been reasonable, broadly supportive of growth. But there's been quite a lot of uncertainty, which has been, about the policy environment, about the political environment in the past, that has been a drag on private investment. These uncertainties need to be alleviated to allow private investment to recover. And it's really the fall in private investment that's been holding growth down there.
Based on what the research and all that at the IMF looking at, do you think we're beginning to see a major shift in Sub-Saharan Africa economic leadership from these big three, Nigeria, South Africa, and Angola, to other countries within the sub-region?
Okay, so I think this has been going on for quite a while. It's just that the bigger countries dominate the regional aggregate so much that you haven't noticed the fact that you've had countries like Ethiopia, Tanzania in the past, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire that have been growing fairly rapidly over the last many years. What we are seeing right now is that even though the regional number is at 3.5, we still have quite a lot of countries, about 21, 22 countries that grow 5% or more at a very rapid clip. And really, this has been true for the last 15, 20 years, that you've seen quite a large number of countries continuing to enjoy fairly robust growth.
Do you think growth in these smaller countries are sustainable in your view?
Absolutely. I mean, it really depends on the policy environment that countries are pursuing. What we see in those rapidly growing countries is that in many of these cases, growth has been led by strong investment in public infrastructure in particular. So governments have been investing quite a bit in infrastructure. And what the policy requirement to sustain this growth now is that to hand over the reins of growth from the public to the private sector. So, easing off on the governments being the main driver of growth and allowing more private sector growth. But I think, we are reasonably confident that these countries can sustain their growth.
Is it very surprising to you when you look at these two small countries in West Africa, Senegal and Benin Republic, Nigeria's neighbor, becoming a major economic growth?
Not really. One thing I always ask myself about, is why aren't these countries growing at 7%? Given how low per capita income is in many of our countries in the region, given so much potential that our countries have, the question we should be asking is why isn't every country growing at 7%? So really, in terms of how we approach any analysis, any policy recommendation, it is what is required to allow this country to grow at 7%. So no, I'm not surprised.